Recording. Well, we have a very unusual community dinner tonight. When instead of a packed house, we have an empty house, and we have the housemates and Dean, and we're gonna have a jolly old time just going over dryness. Generally, these talks are made for people that are those of you that are watching this on the internet. This is why we're doing it, and I was just telling the housemates, and even though there was a misunderstanding about tonight, it's always good to keep momentum going. And I came home for this. I would have stayed down in San Luis Obispo, but I am very loyal to my word, and I said I'd come back, and there's a reason why I'm back. I know that for certain. Probably another night would have been too many or something, and you just never know. And so I'm building momentum for the cleanse, which starting October 1st, which to me, the cleanse is the way you adapt into autumn. And that's why in healthcare, what we're going to do is put together a model like you should have your seasonal visit. You're going to so you have your seasonal visit before the season starts, ideally 2 or 3 months. So you're ready for fall in June, July. You get ready for the winter in September, October. You get ready for the spring in January, February. Maybe even December. And I found that out through an advanced acupuncturist I was seeing about my allergies years ago. And this guy said, you have a lot of water. You have a water element imbalance in the spring. And he says, I think the fire of the summer is coming up out of your liver and it's pushing all the water out of your head. And I think you need to prepare for the spring, because I can almost target it. It was like the last week in April to like the first week in June. All during my birthday month would be misery when I had allergies. And he said, you need to start preparing for your allergies in the middle of the winter, in December and January, and get ready for it. And I was like, wow, this is another aspect to health that I hadn't even considered, is getting ready for a chronic problem season. And, and in the metaphor of not sleeping and waking up at a particular time, then theoretically it might be like, I need to prepare for the nighttime in the morning. There's a theory about satiety. The people that eat a lot with breakfast, they generally, in large studies, eat a lot less for dinner. And those who eat less in the morning generally eat more with dinner. So there's this prep thing, right? You prep for dinner by having a good solid breakfast and lunch, right? And then you're like, I can skip dinner. And the theme tonight's dry, and it's autumn. And on the west coast of the United States, we're in this, I'm just going to come right out and say we're in a geoengineered dryness, but nevertheless, the narrative is that the West Coast is a drought in the summer, and I don't believe that anymore, but that's what we're living under. And so dryness has certain qualities that one can spot on your tongue, and potentially in your pH. I think you're going to be more acidic when you're dry because there's more carbon molecules in your body and less hydrogen and oxygens. But, you could probably argue that a lot of different ways. And so our body does like this time of year, the earth is dry. And the air is dry, and until that first rain comes, well, here by the ocean, we're a little skewed, even though, we have the moisture off the water with the desiccates in the sky. After living here my whole life, I can tell you that, I used to water 20 years ago, half as much as I do now. And that's how dry the air is. And having gardened as long, I can say that with utter confidence, that. So what are the aspects of dryness, so it comes with autumn, and then the other theme for tonight is early warning signals, which I'll have I promised last week to have the photo of the whiteboard put on the YouTube, and I haven't even uploaded any of it yet. So sorry, folks, if those of you that really look forward to the videos, we need like a staff around here. And we're getting there, slowly but surely, creating the new world. So dryness has a good book for dryness is Paul Pitchford's book, Healing with Whole Foods. I have it out here at my side. And I'm going to read a little bit out of it, but not too much. And I also have I'm going to go into a screen share for those of you watching the video. And this is my old apprentice manual. And so there are foods that dry dampness or foods that are drying. So if you want like a damp dairy, then, goat milk is more drying than cow milk relatively, but goat milk is still damp by, you compare it to like a radish, or a dry crunchy cracker. So what we're going to do is I'm going to outline like what happens on the body when things are dry. So the first thing is that the tongue will get more red. And if you think about it, when you have a creek that's drying up, the creek doesn't move as fast. And then that causes the tongue to get red. because the circulation, it'll turn a little bluish or purplish even. The tongue coating will look dry. Generally, some people have a layer of slime on their tongue. We take a tongue photograph, and then others don't. And so, having looked at this for a long time, dryness would be one aspect of dryness would be dehydration. So we're just looking at the tongue coat will be dry on this whiteboard here. I mean, on the screen here. So the method tonight is just to give a few ideas about how do you moisten the body, what dries it out, what are the early warning signals, and so what's another sign of dryness? Wrinkles. Wrinkles or dryness, and lymph stagnation by some people's views. So when we see a wrinkled face or a wrinkled tongue, I work with these macrobiotic people, and some of them, I'm 56 now, and there were guys that were my age that they had what I call shrunken apple head, because they were vegan too long, in my opinion, and they had protein deficiency, so their body was being cannibalized, and their cheeks were sunken in, and they had ashen look here, and it was like they were dry. And a lot of them, not a lot, a number of them in the Michio-kushi clan they were doing this 80-20 rule with cigarettes and coffee. They were practicing macrobiotics, but they were smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee. And both of those things are drying on the body, right? Smoking is drying. It consumes yin. Every time you take in the dry smoke, consumes yin, causes dryness. And then coffee, by definition, is cold and dry. Cold in a lot of ways is metaphorical. When they say cold in Chinese, it generally means like it's a laxative. And having had a cup this morning, I can guarantee you that me and my friend were competing for the bathroom, like within minutes of each other, actually. We drank our, the motel we were in was just adorable in Morro Bay. And so they gave us this little Americano with a sourdough bread, hollandaise, like an English eggs Florentine? No. What are the hollandaise? Benedict, yeah, like a Benedict. And it's really a sweet little touch, organic, and wow, it's pretty interesting.
So you don't have to mix the two. Either or still gives wrinkles.
Yeah.
The cigarette and the
yeah, and combined, it's like a double whammy.
It's a double. Wow.
So another thing you'll see on the pulse is like a river itself too. So if you feel my pulse, it's big, and it's exploding out of the body, and it's wide enough that I know that I have good circulation. The narrower the pulse is here, the more the yin or the circulation is drying up. And that can also correlate to anemia, a type of anemia in Chinese medicine, or blood deficiency, they call it. So blood deficiency or fluid deficiency, that's related to dryness. In the West, we generally just talk a lot about hydration. That's kind of our way of talking about yin. And so when you have too much fire without enough water controlling it, then you have this dryness. And there are signs of this all around us, and we don't pay attention. And, one of them is headaches are often just dehydration. Oh, the door was locked. Look at that. Hey, I'm going to pause this for a minute. Thank you. Okay, we're back. 2 new arrivals. So we were talking about dryness, and so how do you find signs of dryness, and what is dryness? And so on the whiteboard over there, you'll see that. Hey, Bernie, can you turn that light on in my kitchen right there? Because it helps yeah. So dryness has more carbon in it, and wetness has more H2O. And when we're talking about the chosen ones, the last forevers, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen make up most of the known physical universe, our living universe. And so wait a minute. So when you get heavy in carbon and nitrogen and you lose the H2O, then you end up drying out. And the nitrogen's the protein. So you eat a lot of protein without drinking enough water, then you end up nitrogen and sulfur rich, but sulfur is a heating element, and heat dries you out a lot, right? Speaking of which, we're going to pass around for the heat element.
There's some heat in that second half.
This is cayenne pepper, and you probably won't need to do more than that.
The succotash is
Ah!
kind of in it.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
You just did a thumb.
Yeah, that's like a 10,000 IU cayenne pepper from Center Process.
Oh, wow.
But then you can feel it. You know, it's one thing to like, wow, that's drying.
So nitrogen helps with the dryness.
Just taste it or take the whole thing?
Do you like spicy?
Yeah.
Take a little sip.
Just take a
Get
sip.
a teaspoon or two. That
And
this
he
is
just did his finger.
my mouth is still burning, Jim.
Yeah, there's different levels of heat with cayenne, so.
This is a whole new level.
Mhm.
I had no idea.
Take some yogurt, Craig. That'll wash it down.
Yeah, I got this little green sauce here.
So Craig, I'm really curious because now that I know that there's nitrogen in our urine, is
God.
it a good idea to put it on our face if we have wrinkles?
Well, that's what comfrey. So comfrey has the same. So that's fire, right? And so comfrey has the same compound called allantoin in it. That's very similar to urea, which is very similar to urine. And so you could take the comfrey and puree it and do the comfrey plaster, which is pureed comfrey greens, and be doing just as good, probably better because you're getting the chlorophyll too. Pea would be okay if you could. I mean, if you could get past the idea of putting pea on your
You should
face.
ask Monica.
I know Monica would know, sure.
She's the expert.
Okay, sorry, folks, for the. Oh my God, put out the fire. So water controls fire, and this is a little seaweed cubes, agar agar, with blueberries and cream. Isn't that what you do? You tortilla chip, you get the hot salsa out of your mouth. You get a few more tortilla chips.
Yeah.
Sour cream, yeah, Gary. That was very helpful. My mouth was very uncomfortable, and I only did in this shot glass, literally my finger in there, maybe half of a milliliter, which is equivalent to 10 drops. My mouth is burning up right now. And so I want to give myself the feeling though of fire, because that causes dryness. And so is fire, there's a few examples in the body. Is fire a rapid or a slow pulse?
Rapid.
Rapid pulse is fiery, good. Is fire in the body showing as red or pale color?
Red.
Red. See, so if you start thinking about it, it's actually pretty easy. Dryness, wrinkles accompany dryness, but wrinkles can also accompany hot and dry, right? Like you see some of those natives that are out in the sun their whole lives, and they're just like those macrobiotic guys I told you about that were like shrunken apple face, shrunken apple head. I called these teachers I had in the 90s back east that were vegans their whole lives and had severe protein deficiency, and their faces literally, they were in their 50s and they were shriveled up. And those are the teachers I tossed aside and said, I'm not listening to you. I'm going to this other guy over here,
Yeah.
John Kaczynski, and this more moderate Japanese woman, because they were eating meat and dairy, and they were talking about the energetics of meat and dairy, not just throwing it out. And I said, because everything has value. And even though I was a vegan ideology at the time, I started to see that the holes in the vegan ideology in the middle of it, in the 90s for me. And protein deficiency, when I saw these men and a couple of women that had been doing this a lot of their life, it was a huge red flag for me. Because I had lost my stamina. I was down to 155 pounds and I'm 6'2.5". And my family was mortified when I came home from my vegan adventure in macrobiotics in 1996. I mean, my mom was like, I have pictures and a photo album of it. I mean, I documented it because it was like, here's what Craig as a vegan, here's what a protein type as a vegan looks like. Not good, stick. And so since the 90s, then my process has been seeing like what will keep weight on, because some of us have trouble keeping weight off and some of us have trouble keeping weight on. So dryness is generally thin people and dampness is generally big people. Dryness is associated with vata in the Ayurvedic tradition. So dryness then can also, you can think of cracks in your consciousness, bad. MS is dry nerves.
I did not know that.
It's the nerve sheath, the protection cracks, and then the nerve signal leaks out.
That's why they have spasms.
Because the nerve isn't going through a clean circuit. It's like a wire with too big of a wire and too small of a wire and too big of a current running through it. It'll melt the wire, and it'll also melt the protective coating around the wire. It keeps it insulated. And so we work the same way. And this is what really turned me on into yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong years ago, was the idea that our body is an electric circuit. And we're only going to retain so much chi, and then we're going to find ways to leak the excess out. And that's what I've consistently seen in 30 to 35 years of studying this is some people go to, Dan Millman wrote a book about it called it's called The Gateways of Release. And it's brilliant. He talks about some people go to scary movies and they vent off their excess chi there. Some sex addicts and some are drinkers and pot smokers and thrill seekers and overworkers and oversleepers. And we all have our path of poison to drain our excess that we're uncomfortable with.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah, one entheogen teacher, Dale Pendell, who wrote 3 books about these entheogenic properties of various plants and herbs. He said, we all have a poison, we all have a poison path. And so pick your poison carefully. I thought that was kind of wise. I had coffee today, like I said, but if I have coffee, then the rest of the day I'm making up for the cold and the dryness the coffee is going to give me. Its byproduct. And the inflammatory state. I got really lucky today. I served 3 times in the last 24 hours and I have pretty much no aches. And knock on wood. Bigger than wood, the wood head. So one metaphor you can all get about dryness too is when a creek dries up, does the water move faster or slower?
Slower.
So then you might see purplish on the person's tongue or bluish in the sclera because it's stagnating, and a bruise is stagnant blood. So that's the book that I think I recommended that book to Kelly back in the day. And there's a whole thing about dryness in there we're going to go through. And so they talk about dryness affects the lungs first and foremost. And so heat affects the lungs, and obviously smoke affects the lungs, all the particles. So then we want to make sure we keep our lungs moist, which means we want herbs and foods that moisten the lungs, ideally. And so there's a few on this little PowerPoint thingy here, and a few in the book over there. We'll bust that out. So that's kind of the point tonight, is just get ready for the early warning signals. And so a dry tongue, like we're in the driest season of the year. There's been no rain. The earth's dying, and so it's like a dry sponge. And so you want to be careful when you start adding water to the dry earth, because it just runs off, right? I was watching this mountainside today. On the way here through Prunedale, they had cut down all the trees, and this entire meadow was sloped about like this, probably 10 degrees. They had just whacked down everything. And I was looking at going, this is a flood waiting to happen, because all the water's going to run right off. They didn't swale it. They didn't terrace it. They didn't manicure the land at all. So the water is going to run right off of that, right down into the road. And I mean, it's like, and the topsoil of the earth is the muscle of the earth. And the earth is getting skinnier because all the topsoil is going into the ocean. You don't want your muscle in your bladder, do you? You want your muscle to run your body. What's kind of what's happening to the earth is the muscles of the earth are going out into the blood, which is the ocean. So that's something to think about, is like this kind of management. To me, it just makes complete sense to see a mountainside and have water going down meandering in a switchback. A straight line can actually become a mile if you go, the swale far enough. And the water, my friend up in Laytonville, that's what he did with this gray water on his house. The gray water comes out and it goes through a series of switchbacks down into this meadow, and all their wastewater feeds the orchard and the herbs. And yet, if you do that in the city, see, that's one of the gaslighting that's going on here, is like proper water management keeps your land moist, even if you're in a drought. But the people in control, I mean, we're talking about the very, very top people. They don't want us knowing this stuff, and they actually discourage us having gray water. And black water, forget it, composting toilets, it's still like, people it's like, and it's not waste, it's a resource. It's full of nitrogen. And the earth just puts that right back into itself, And in China, they spray their fields with manure, live, wet, wet waste. In some place, I don't know how it's going on now, but I've heard a lot about that.
Human waste?
Yeah, they just spray right on the fields.
The toxicity.
You want to cure it. I mean, you want to compost waste, and from my research and experience, if you got a year and even a tiny bit of heat and you mulch enough, your human waste, there's no pathogens in there. That's the Humanure Handbook. I forget that guy's name, but God, he's got some good data in that book. And so I practice some of what he does. And if you're out in nature, you can dig a hole and put mulch over it. And then if you bury it deep enough, it's got to be at least a foot down though, because I've been out in the redwoods out here in the mountains and come back, the next morning, and these animals they'll dig it up and eat it.
Really?
It's a resource
Yes, scavengers.
because they're dry. The ants are in the house. The honey that I had over in the middle room, they found the honey in the middle room. So they got their little damp sensors up because it's dry out there, right? We haven't had any problem with ants since we moved in, remember? So, they deal with that queen, and this was a short-lived little excursion into the house, I could tell. Because it's dry. And so things move less than the dryness. And think about when it's cold and dry. And you really don't want to move, right? You just want to be inside. So a cold and dry pulse will be a pulse that you can barely feel that's really, really narrow. A hot, wet pulse will be like coming out of the skin, and it won't have a border on it. It's like, so they're like, one's like a little big and flabby and one's tiny and super tight. If you think about, a cold, dry hose versus a hot hose too, you think about it, a hot hose is spongy and a cold, dry hose is like you crack and break it, right? That's kind of how the body works. Cracking is associated with dryness. So cracks in the skin, cracks in the tongue. And now when you see cracks in tongues, like it starts to make more sense, doesn't it? They've got cracks all the way down to their anus. Good dinner conversation. Laugh out loud. He's over there eating. Yeah. So another sign of dryness is dehydration, and dehydration means your heart may not beat right. And one way we check for that is the Ragland's test, lying down and standing up. And if you get a heart palpitation, then you can almost certainly say there could be a possibility of dryness, especially if the tongue is smaller and cracked and really red or purplish. I believe a lot of the times what I'm seeing in people is the signs of dehydration, subtly and not so subtly. And then as Pitchford was saying in his book, that we tend to run into lung problems with dryness as the first organ affected. I would agree with that and say from experience, then if you have constipation, you want to look at making sure you're getting enough lung moisture in. And so there's a few foods for that. Like seaweed's one of my standbys for moisturizing the body. It's loaded with minerals. It's like the fire from the cayenne's almost gone. And the next one that's easy is like chia and flax, and that's kind of in this container here. So you could just get a sense of like, oh, that's really slimy. Feel the slimy. And then I have two others that are drying. That's some of the hottest cayenne I've ever had. So fire is drying. And so this is a Triphala amla berry kind of dried out, and you can get a little bit of the astringent. And you notice there's a puckering. Astringency makes you pucker a little bit. You don't want the experience tonight, do you?
No.
So Triphala is good form of vitamin C for those who are big and excessive and damp. Someone like me, Triphala, no go. Sure, it's high in vitamin C, but it's too drying and astringent. It would make me into a Vata deranged maniac,
Vata deranged.
Vata deranged? I'm a maniac. You are a maniac. You saw. I can't do it right, but here's a attempt. In the spirit of things.
How much water do you think you need to stay hydrated?
So that's a good, there's some remedies. This is going to be a little bit all over the place. It's not very long tonight. So one of the remedies is 70% of your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 200 pounds and 140 ounces, if you weigh 100 pounds and 70 ounces.
But if you don't have enough salt or minerals.
Half your
you
body
can't
weight,
dry
excuse me.
out.
Half your body weight, sorry. Half
Yeah,
your
I
body.
thought it was
Half your
half.
body, sorry about that.
Yeah.
It was the 70% was the protein thing. So half your body weight. So if you're 200 pounds is 100 ounces, 100 pounds, 50 ounces. daily. Doesn't have to be water though. It could be soup, vegetable juice, broths, herbal tea. But if you have coffee or sugar or alcohol, then your quota goes up 20 to 50%.
Versus
You need more because you're dehydrated. Like Gatorade actually ultimately is dehydrating because they're giving you all the sweetener. And the sweetener, the part is that's the dehydrating part.
Yeah.
You can get it through fruit, right? Like watermelon, honeydew, stuff like that.
Unsweet fruits. Just some people like me, I can't get my moisture through fruit. I get too alkaline and I have allergy symptoms. But yeah, some people can, especially if like, you know, I'm out, all I got is watermelons growing in the field. I don't got no water. And, you know, the mineral salts in melons are very good for some people. But for some blood type O's, there's just some of us that like, I do not like to get near melons. I like the way they taste, but I don't think about them. That's the first red flag is I never think about them. Even in the heat, I don't crave them. I'd rather have lemon juice, you know, lemonade or something than melon. But if they're on your radar, then there's no reason you shouldn't take advantage of them, you know, especially if you're used to living in the tropics or a hot climate, like if you're living out in, you know, Madeira here in the valley or something, or Visalia, you know, you're definitely going to want some melons in the afternoon. It's freaking hot. Speaking of which, the cactus fruits are, I see them starting to bloom now. So those, the red cactus fruits are very hydrating.
Are you talking about the little red balls in between the green cactus? You
Yeah.
get that?
Yeah, those little red fruits are like really sweet and amazing, but you gotta get the spines out. And you can't pick them with your hands because I tried. You pick them with your hands and you've got 100 little spines in your hand. You got to pull each one of them out.
So just like you take out. the
Prickly
spines,
pear
you use
fruit?
a
Yeah,
knife.
prickly pear fruit.
Do you use a knife then?
Prickly pear. Yeah, you have to have gloves and a knife. And yeah, I mean, it's like,
Bear paw with really long claws.
that's how they get them like
Yeah.
that.
thick skin.
What was that guy that had the hand claws? Dr. What was that movie?
Oh, Freddy Krueger?
No, Edward Scissorhands. You get Edward
Edward
Scissorhands.
Edward
Scissorhands,
Scissorhands,
yeah.
yeah. Now you get-
Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger could do it. Yeah, he could definitely do it.
Oh, wow.
Excessive bleeding will cause dryness. So yeah, you want to make sure you get water in, but there's a whole piece with fats and hydration because your cell membranes are made out of fat and fats are moisturizing, as everybody knows. You know, we put fats on our skin in the form of lotion. They're just refined fats. And so if you can't metabolize fats properly, you will never be hydrated, not in a zillion years, like how much water you drink. That's my contention. And if you can't digest fats, that means you got to work on your liver, your intestinal lining, your lymphatic system, and your spleen.
How do you know if you
And your
digest-
portal veins.
Digest fat.
Well, when somebody presents dryness, like I have people that they drink water and their thirst never goes away. Like there's just this incessant heat and nothing, drink water all night and they're just peeing it out, you know. That person's in like what they call Xiaoyang, or there's some stage of different stages of degeneration where the heat is consuming the yin, and that person, you got to get salt in their water actually, for their cells to absorb it at that point. And that's where you would give them maybe some raw butter just to slow everything down, you know. And I think the best way to get fat in the body is in that raw form. And then Ajanus, Yvonne Planas had a whole piece about raw butter, raw honey. You know, if you just start with like raw butter and raw honey, it's a great way to just get yourself hydrated a little bit, if you can tolerate the sugar part of the honey. But he was not a fan of salted. He was more of a fan of unsalted cheeses, unsalted butters. I'm not, because he was looking at salt from a different viewpoint of the standard American refined salt. And there's a lot of confusion about what is a good salt, because there are not very many. Like the pink salt was a whole conspiracy psyop, you know. There is a true pink salt, Himalayan pink salt, but there are not many around. You know, I'll tell you what, the Trader Joe's and the Costco is not a Himalayan pink salt. It's a pink salt, but questionable, you know, quality.
Dyed maybe?
Could be, yeah, could be. So if you try the astringent, then we have this is ortho phosphoric acid, you have the bright yellow acid here. So this is an acidic, so acids are warming, right? You stick your finger in a vat of acid, it feels pretty hot, I would imagine, right? So this relieves nausea. It's a nice tart acid. I have a client that uses it when she gets problems with digestion from overdoing it. And so this is a sympathetic nerve tonic. It tonifies the sympathetic nerve system. So if you're going, and you can't rest, this will might alleviate your nausea long enough so you can finish your day. I use it occasionally like that, but I usually have to lay down. Today I laid down for 20 minutes after driving for 3 hours and surfing all morning and having coffee. It was like that my body just said, you gotta have to be still for a few minutes, and 20 minutes it was the answer. And that's what restores the log. The yin is rest. No amount of tonics and ginsengs and prostrations before the Lord and confessing your sins to the dietary priest is going to rebuild your yin. You gotta rest, and that's the difference between, like, I used to study the Druids, and the Druids, apparently they would hibernate like the yogis would, sometimes for hundreds of years, and then they only came out when they were needed. And that was pretty cool. Like some of the Celtic ancestors, they would just hang out in the Druid land down underground, and then they get a summons. Hey, it's 1512. We need you to kind of come out and fix this problem over here. Wow. That's a phosphate liquid, orthophosphoric acid.
That's pretty good.
It's one of the few synthetics center process makes, but it's very, very effective.
No.
It's a little bit stimulating because phosphorus is the main energy element in ATP, the energy molecule, adenosine triphosphate. So there's the phosphorus. So that's drying. It's another drying element, but through a different mechanism. It's sympathetic nerve stimulation, and it's acid. So phosphorus is one of those elements on the dryness side. So if I had somebody over here on my scale here, we'd have phosphorus and various acids on the dryness side. Early warning zone 2 is a heart palpitations. We were talking about that earlier. Your heart might feel a little irregular if you're feeling dry. That's one of the themes of the fall is if you can spot your early warning signals, then you don't have to get sick. If you can get working on a cold within the first 6 hours, you can wipe it out in another 6, but you've got to catch it within the first few hours. You start getting your conjuplex and your echinacea and all your elderflowers and all your killers, and then it doesn't settle in like into the other arm of the immune system where it's going to run its course no matter what. If you can wipe it out immediately with your this guy was talking about our generalized antibodies. They're generalized antibodies, and they take care of everything. And then what the messenger RNA experiment is making people their immune system only target specific antibodies. And that's not good. Because you can only target, it's like, I can only target number 12 on the other football team and nobody else.
Yeah, so 45, 29.
That's a big problem for our body.
Come right in on the blitz.
Yeah. Exactly. And there was a great diagram of that. This guy was putting, I was like, oh my God, that's it. So there's non-specific antibodies, and then there's specific antibodies, and that's what is being programmed into people that are getting this, is one of his contentions. I don't know for sure. I've studied it enough to be confused, and scared, because I have clients that have, been jabbed. But back to being dry. I guess I would make you dry if your immune system isn't working properly. So fat digestion, that's right. So one of the easy ways to work on your fat digestion is raw beets and raw radishes, and definitely more raw fats. No frying of oils of any kind if you're having that kind of problem. So people that are dehydrated, I would say, you want to try to eat more raw, especially raw fats, raw coconut oil, raw butter, raw avocados. Probably olives would be the salt would be a little too, drying. It's a good place to start. And then you get there's fat enzymes you can take, and there's different companies. Their product, one of them, Systemic Formulas, has a product called L-B, and that's fat enzyme lipase, beets, choline, stomach acid, and lecithin, I think. So that kind of like they're calling it a portal vein product, which I would tend to disagree a little bit, but anything we do to get those portal veins opening, those are all the veins from our intestines, and that's what has to work. Is fat is absorbed through the lymphatic system, not through the portal veins. And so if your lymph system is sluggish, which we can see very clearly in the sclera on the right eye on this side over here, and the outer is the spleen lymph area. So that's where I look in a lot of cases, is like, oh, your lymph is completely congested, The spleen is on the left side, that's right.
But you said right eye.
Oh, sorry, lower right eye.
But it's.
No. How's that? Gaslighting. The gaslighting teacher up there. Yeah, so the spleen, it's easy to see. A swollen tongue is probably lymph congestion. Blue-eyed people generally have more problems with their lymph. Bernie, you got that little something there on your arm. That's definitely too much waste for the body to handle. So it puts in a little package and says, I'll put it over there and deal with it later. And now you're in the dealing with it later phase, That's why when we get something like that removed and we don't deal with why it was there, chances are it usually just comes back.
Yeah, it did come back. I had it on my arm.
Yeah, so you just affirmed what I said. Women with fibroids, sometimes they get lucky and then they make the changes, but the fibroid might come back because they didn't deal with why the fibroid came in the first place.
The root of the cause, yeah.
Yeah, and usually with dryness, when there's symptoms of dryness, it's usually because the person's overdoing it and their fire is consuming their log. And when that log is burned down, is there any more fire left? No. So a huge early warning sign is low energy and unable to sleep. Huge sign of the fire is consuming the yin, and it needs to be dealt with. And there's a bag over there of black herbs called Ramania. That's a Chinese foxglove, and that's there to remind me to keep boiling that stuff because the old people in China use that a lot.
Yeah, that stuff's good.
It tastes good. It's caramely, sweet,
Yeah.
and ironically, it's from a toxic foxglove. It's the Chinese foxglove root. Isn't that fascinating? So it restores yin. Seaweed restores yin. Talking about asparagus root. So asparagus stalks will restore yin, but asparagus root, shatavari, excellent for restoring yin. Ashwagandha restores yin through higher red blood cell count and lowering cortisol, which is a fiery hormone, right? So as we're heading into autumn, it's good to have a strategy. And so one of them is bone broth is hydrating. There's fat in there and easily absorbed minerals. But really, I noticed like stimulants this time of year. I got lucky the last couple of days. I was on 200 milligrams of mate yesterday and probably had a strong cup of coffee today with another mate can. So I probably was on 340 milligrams of caffeine today. And I didn't get the spun out jitters because I was taking minerals the whole time with it. Magnesium and my seaweed minerals from the center process and my B vitamins. And I believe there's something about stress in here, when you're on vacation, there's just less input, and I'm used to a lot of input. And I get used to like, boom, boom, like when you were talking to Dean about, you got something going on, I was like, it went right through me. It's like, because right now I'm in, I don't give a fuck mode until Sunday night, Monday morning. It's like, for me, it's very strange to be in this place. Actually, I was driving home today going, I don't want to go home. I just want to party. I was like, wow, I haven't heard that voice in years. Who are you? Yeah, it's quite wonderful. Another remedy is you can moisturize your room. You can have diffuser, yeah, in your room. My mom had something else with the Vicks Vapo Rub. Remember that stuff? What was that thing called? What's that thing called?
A diffuser.
Vicks.
No, it wasn't a diffuser.
A humidifier.
Humidifier, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the humidifier when you were a kid in the room?
I did.
Oh yeah, that was great when you had the dry cough and the humidifiers going and the Vicks vapor thing going. Oh my God, that was one of the best ever. Pepto-Bismol. You know what Bismol is? Pepto-Bismol is? Bismuth. The element bismuth. They made that into Pepto-Bismol.
What's bismuth?
I don't really know, but I know it's not a fun element you want in your body.
It's a Band-Aid at Beaks.
Oh man, it's palliative, certainly.
That's not good for you because kids actually like it. It's like candy, and they'll say that they have a tummy ache just so they can get Pepto-Bismol.
I did too. I did too.
You did?
Remember in Outlander, laudanum too? They're giving laudanum, like, it's like, don't give too much laudanum, it's like, don't give too much poppy either, because then your bowels will completely stop, and that's why you probably want to be using poppy more topically and less orally, because I mean, I never really had the digestive part of it, because if you do bitters or magnesium with the poppy, then it kind of moves stuff along. But the problem is people get like, I overdosed on poppy, I overdosed on wild lettuce, I overdosed on kava. All of them, because man, this is like the best thing ever. I don't feel awful. Wild lettuce has opioids and poppies have opioids, and Somebody, one of you guys give me the seeds this year? I got another batch of poppy seeds from another person's like, oh, you gotta try my poppies. I got all these different, oh, it was Noelle, I think, and her partner. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have like multicolored poppies next year, purple ones and blue ones and red ones. And so the next house next year will have a super bright motif. Oh, but I digress again. So less activity is going to be moisture. And so this is also a time of year of reflection because we're letting go of all the activity of the summer. And in a way, if sleep is processing the day's emotions, then the autumn, the spiritual thing is to process the summer's activity and to muse and to write and to reflect. And, you know, in the cycle of life, this is the ending of life. Fall is like the ending of life, and wintertime would be death. So at the end of life, you muse more. Generally, people, in the United States, it's a little weird, you know. They don't muse until they're forced in their retirement homes, you know, but they fall fast in the US. God, I drove by one in Morro Bay. I was up on this hillside today. There must have been 200 or 300 people in this old folks home. Too big. I was thinking too big, you know, like impersonal.
Yeah.
You know, what do you want? Like, I'd want probably one staff member every 5 people at least, you know, in an old folks home, but I bet you it's more like 1 to 30 or 1 to 20. You know, what's all about cha-ching, you know?
Yeah, money.
About money, you know, cha-ching.
You got the money for that. Personal.
I keep digressing from the dry, so I'm gonna end this thing early tonight too. So one of the ways we counteract dryness too is if you're cleansing and you're dry, then you're not going to do well because dryness is the bowels are slower. That's a sign of dryness too, is dark, hard, rabbit turd poops are a sign of dryness.
Does it matter if they float or sink?
Floating generally means there's more fat in them, and sinking generally means there's more minerals in them. Generally, but I could never nail down my teachers to any kind of perfect bowel movement. The only answer I got was the thickness of your big toe. It sinks like the Titanic, part of it, and part of it sticks up. I had this one teacher, finally cornered him, but he didn't want to say it, you know. My brother calls those horse heads. Like a horse head sticking out one end and the tail's down in the toilet.
It's always different depending on what we eat.
But you don't really want them to float. You don't really want them to sink either. So you do want the kind of partially both.
You know, pooping into water is like
It's
just a
stupid.
very recent modern thing. Like, why is that how we're?
Well, then if you're doing it on land and you're squatting, you would say, well, if it squirts out and, you know, falls everywhere, then it's too loose. And if it's like it hurts coming out and there's a black tar chunk sitting there, you know, you're definitely dry, right? And that's the first thing with, you know, the constipation. I tell people, you got to drink more water. Just try more water, you know. Dr. Sawyer at the Sawyer Chiropractic used to say, you know, he would tell people to drink a quart of water right before you go to sleep, and he didn't care. If you got to get them pee, screw it. You're going to feel better after a month of doing this every night. And most people did, you know. And you practice the half your body weight, and it's shocking. Like, when you lose, if I lose track of my water for a day or two, I'll just get a headache to remind me. You're dehydrated.
You put salt in your water?
More of it now, but that machine, the AquaCure machine, is doing something. I mean, my first dose of that water, I flossed my teeth and ran and like flushed the water through my teeth, and then my gums were swollen for a week. Hurt to chew. The teeth hurt right here. They're funny. They're a little swollen still. And so whatever that properties of that water, if I eat anything sugary, I get plaque on my teeth within 5 seconds. And I think there's colony is a bad bug, you know, up in here, and this machine is just rooting them out. Like, because that was just that's inflammation in the gums, you know. So yeah, salt is something I'm trying to do that, and then add the salt. And on the trip I had salted umubashi in that water, and I gotta say I'm getting away with, like, I had surfed 3 times in more than 24 hours and drove 6 hours in the car in 24 hours and 3 hours there and 3 hours back, and here I am, we were talking, you know, and I'm like, who is this guy? This isn't Craig Lane. So, you know, all this little, my friend that I was seeing, she doesn't know about all the contraptions that are going on. So maybe structured water of some sort is more hydrating than unstructured water, but I'm still going to go back to the fat thing. So I knew I couldn't tolerate fat because I was always pushing the edge, and I had a lot of fat this one meal at a corporate meal. And I was, oh God, I was working for Unisys. I was 25 years old, and I ate like 2 dinners because I was on the meal ticket for the corporation. And I woke up at 3 a.m. You know that feeling where, you know, your meal isn't gone anywhere. I finished eating about 9 or 10. It was like 3:30 in the morning. It was just gurgling down there. I had that horrible feeling of like, this isn't going to finish going down that way. It's going to end up this way. And it did. And it was too much fat. My body just said, nope, going back up the other exit route. And they were consistent. So I realized when I really saw what my life was supposed to be in terms of carbohydrates and restricting carbohydrates, I said to myself, my only calorie source is fat, because you can only get so many calories from protein. It's toxic to your body to get too many calories from protein. It turns into ammonia. Turn protein into energy. It generates ammonia as a byproduct. It's very toxic. And so I was like, I got fat or carbs or alcohol as my calories, you know, and I was like, I got to find a way to digest fat. So I did the long 10 years of work because I was stubborn and still unable to give up the old stuff partially. But it was a lot of intestinal rejuvenation and liver fortification, pancreas repair and stomach repair, and lowering my thyroid down to too fast of a thyroid. I broke my neck right where the thyroid innervation is in C6, C7. And Scott Sawyer was the first healer to actually give me good input on that. He goes, you broke your neck right at your thyroid innervation. You say you can never gain weight. Maybe your thyroid's irritated from the nerve innervation. So he adjusted me twice a month, weekly, sometimes twice a week for a year, did x-rays, and then I gained 10 pounds that year. So that's a good plug for chiropractic right there. They're the snap and crack, you know, some people do better with, you know, the more mellow forms of chiropractic. I had one of my first sponsors here in town. I'm not going to mention him because he probably wouldn't appreciate it, but I worked in his office for 11 years, and he knew I broke my neck, and so he kind of tricked me in my first adjustment on my neck. I was like laying down, and he's like, oh, let me rub your shoulders, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna surrender. And then I felt him start to go into the motion, and I was like, I mean, you're gonna do my neck, aren't you? And right before he did it, he goes, yep, and he went, and then it just went, and I was like, I was seeing stars. I was like, oh, whoa, that was really something. And then it was still like, it was like PTSD. I told him, like, dude, you just triggered something. Please don't do that again. You know, and I appreciate what he did. And I also needed to draw the boundary because I wasn't ready. And he just sort of pushed it, which was great. And, you know, 1,000 adjustments later, I'll say, you know, some people are just snapping cracks, not for them. And then you shouldn't force them into it. You know, there's the more subtle forms of chiropractic that are definitely doable. It's craniosacral, it's osteopathy. I mean, there's a lot of other options besides, you know, Rolfing. There's a lot of options besides chiropractic, but the chiropractors have a good business model generally. I mean, some of them do, we'll put it that way. I never appreciated the model where you come in and you snap and crack and you're sent out. And I was like, personal attention, what's your story? What's the context for your situation? Because context is everything for human. Without context, we're just numbers in a computer machine. We'll just look around you. Yeah. That's right. When I started earlier, I said, you know, evil is live spelled backwards. I came in right before I started my talk tonight. I was like, oh my God. So live is the opposite of evil.
And as this one pastor says that I watched, he mentioned the very thing. He said, God is good without a O in it. In other words, so it's like,
yeah.
The devil is the evil with the D.
Oh yeah. I always like Spanish as Diablo. El Diablo.
And they even show him with a smile on the face. So,
The devil.
In the Catholic. Yeah, the Catholic devil. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, this pitchfork is all smiling. I'm gonna watch you burn eternity. You know, but with the catches and all that, there's a part of us that is burning in hell right now. There's a part of us in beatific joy right now. And that was that we were talking about the Project Looking Glass, right? And yeah, if all possible outcomes converge on one, then, you know, like no matter what I do, I'm going. That was the basis of one of those movies in Hollywood, Final Destination. they were going, I guess I never saw it, but I guess the premise was this woman was going to die on this airplane no matter what choice she made. She was going down. Oh man. Oh, that wouldn't be good. I like the better decision where all outcomes lead to beatific joy. No matter what I do, I'm going to end up in beatific joy. Isn't that a much better thought? I like that better, you know. So I'm going to end on the so we have a cleanse starting October 1st. We're just collecting people that want to join the cause because cleansing makes you clear, and clearer people make clearer decisions, and clearer decisions means a better world where we're not being run by our triggers and our reactions and our cravings for temptations that shouldn't be brought before us. So a couple more remedies, I think, on fat digestion is a lecithin, another way you can help work with these systems, but generally that's what the cleanse is about. Is, you know, if you have trouble being hydrated and you're drinking enough water and you think your minerals are okay, then we should get some lab work first of all and see what your minerals look like in your lab work. You get a hair mineral analysis too, so for $100 you can pretty much figure that out. Then you do a cleanse, and you know that can run you from $200 or $300 depending on how much you want to put into it. But to me, this is all health insurance stuff where you do it now, and then you do your voluntary suffering, and then you have less involuntary suffering. That's what I've seen in my life. The more I stick that thing up my butt and do my enemas and do my self-care and proper sleep and breathing hygiene and closing. When I close my mouth when I sleep, I'm always happier when I wake up. You know, I wake up with my mouth open, my nap today for 20 minutes. It's like, there it is again. Look at things open.
I like that voluntary suffering versus involuntary suffering.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, that is good.
And that's what, because I studied these beings when after I broke my neck, and I was just trying, how am I going to get well? Because this medical system's fucked up, and I'm 25 years old and an experience of God and love, and they're not talking about that over there. And how am I going to heal? Like these idiots gaslighting me over here, and these yogis over here say there's beatific joy, and I'm an angry young man, and what the F's actually going on, you know? And then you just gradually like seeing like, wow, we've been sold so many lies, we don't even know what's real. That's what I ran into. It was like, oh my God. Like, I mean, I had from 21 to 31, I had 200 or 300 times my mind was crushed into dust. Like, how did that just happen? They can't coexist. How? You know, one time I was surfing and my board got stuck on this rock, and my body became an accordion. I felt my spine go,
Oh.
my head was being pulled with the wave and my feet were being pulled backwards. And if I hadn't have relaxed, I would have been done. But I lift up my spine.
Wow.
I don't know how I just survived that. Yeah. So, but part of it is understanding, like I was led to this nature's order, this natural law stuff, that everything that we talk about, you know, all the gods they talk about, and you know, all the Greek gods, for example, the lesser gods, and all the Hindu gods, those are the beings. Those are beings, you know. They're just in a realm we don't understand. And then we have the gods that are named, you know, like there's a point in Hebrew, they say the higher level rabbis, you can't say the name of God, because by saying the name of God, you're limiting God, and God's limitless. And in the Taoism, they say the eternal Tao cannot be named. Once you name it, it's no longer the eternal Tao. It's your egotistical version of it.
They said that about love too. I think.
Oh yeah, we've been sharing the on love, Khalil Gibran. I've just been sharing that in men's group. I shared it again. Pretty freaking powerful, right, Dave? Just seeing like, you know, loving all the sweetness you think it is, right? And our ancestors knew. Ajashanti, my teacher, talks about this. You know, his short version of this is every love sheds a tear. And one of the lines in Khalil Gibran's poem is, you know, to know love is to know the pain of too much tenderness. It's like, wow, I felt that before. The pain of too much tenderness. And there's a whole piece about love that we're fed this frothy, propagandized, gaslighting view of love. It's so limited, you know. But, you know, Latin has all these forms of love, right? I always like te amo. You know? It's just a great statement.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to express that.
Or I desire you, you know, like te quiero is another one like that. There's so many. It's way more romantic, and it can give you the form of love better. In Greek, agape, which is the overflow of natural love without any cause. There's a word in Sanskrit for it. It's the same thing. It's the natural overflow, joy without cause. Joy without cause? Wait, what's that? You got to work for your joy, man. No, it's actually just there, and we unenlighten ourselves away from it. You know, it's always there. And I was practicing that on the way here with all these drivers, you know, 101, like, you know, because it gets dry. Stress causes dryness. Because that's the theme tonight. It's like, I'm going to stay in equanimity, and I lost it 3 times. People zooming and then, you know, almost kill me trying to get into one car ahead of me and passing on the right. I'm already going 75, 80 in the fast lane. I'm like, the goal, okay, equanimity, back to joy, right? I'm not going to unenlighten myself into this person's worry and stress because I'm on vacation. So I went back to vacation mode, like, hey, just, you know. My grandpa always drove 55. Always.
Yeah.
You could count on it.
Carson used to do that. I took a road trip with Carson once.
One cereal, 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Just zoned in 55, and
Yeah.
people be zooming around him. And I mean, I got tons of stories of all the stuff we did in the back of my grandpa's truck that he never knew about until we finally got caught once, but the cars on the freeway. But you know, that's another long story. Oh my God.
It brought you joy, I'm sure.
Oh, mooning cars definitely brought us joy. For my respectable grandfather's truck, you know, out the back. Yeah, we got caught. They pulled him over, and oh man, because me and my brother were the family sort of pets, and we fell from grace that day. We got, it was so wonderful though, seeing the look on his face of like, wow, now he's seen me for what I am, you know, not this idyllic version. He was so disappointed. I was like, yeah, but at least now you're seeing me for what I am. You know, you're not seeing me for your idealized version of me, you know. And but everyone else in the family, I don't know, my gramps was worthy of so much respect of what he worked for Pac Bell his whole life, retired on his Pac Bell pension. He killed his own chickens, had his own garden as a kid. I have memories of, like, you know, one of my first memories of, it's like chickens running around, and just one blood spurting out and running over, you know, like, so my gramps was really a you know, true man of the garden, you know, like your gramps, and, you know, someone that cared, and he understood what we're talking about here. Because when you, so I was in San Luis Obispo, the farmer's market yesterday, and talking to this guy about the Sea Canyon apples and how, and then there was a lady that was doing hand harvested seaweed, and another comment, same theme of, you go sit by the river, and the river gives you guidance. You go sit under the stars, and the stars give you guidance. You listen to the animals howling at night, and the animal howls give you guidance. Listen to the wind will give you guidance. And we do all this externalized shit. Oh, I gotta get it from the psychotherapist over here, or this book over here, and it's all external, right? But the word repent means turn around. The word repent means turn around and look in the present moment. Doesn't mean look out there. Hey, Dean, what do you think about my life? Irrelevant.
What do you think about your own life?
Exactly, relevant.
Yeah,
Relevant.
wonderful.
And that's where dryness comes in too, is it grounds us out of that. And, you know, like a dry spirit, you got a dry day. Numbness is dryness. I mean, overly damp can be numb too, but think about it, if you dry out, like if I don't get enough butter and cream and yin from my dairy, I get neuritis in my hands and feet. I've had it happen from the Mankind Project initiation weekend. They don't let me have 1 quart of milk a day and very limited eating, you know, because it was a survival weekend. And like by day 2, we're standing up we were only getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep and standing most of the day. So my feet were buzzing, but I never complained because I was the whiner when I was a young man. And so that's dryness right there. Some forms of neuropathy and neuritis is dryness, and others it's dryness that's triggered by sugar irritation. Because sugar really irritates the free nerve endings. Chronic sugar eaters and chronic drinkers, they have a lot of problems with their toes. I do a lot of body work. I got some clients, they couldn't even touch their toes. They were so sensitive. Which to me, like, the toes are so sensual, you know, like, I want to be able to have my toes touched, you know, enjoy. You're not a toe person. You're not a foot person.
But I also have neuropathy in my feet and dry skin, just like my father, and we're both sugar addicts.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So you see, I see so much of that, you know. But you've made up for it, you know, like I know that I'm around 100, 150 grams of carbs a day. I'm not keto. This girl I was with today was asking, what do you think about the keto diet? And I was like, you know, getting down to 30 to 50 grams of carbs a day is extremely difficult and stressful. Because it's meat and greens and fat, basically. Maybe nuts, maybe cheese, but you gotta be careful of the gram, you know, certain nuts have more carbs than others. And then if you overcarb, then you're not in ketosis. And I mean, it's really, I don't suggest people should do it without supervision, you know. Not without supervision. I gotta get some of yours too before you go. Okay, I guess that's so we're done tonight. Thank you for attending the virtual version of community dinner. And I didn't have to edit this one, I don't think. I didn't mention anybody's names or insult anybody too much, other than just the FDA and the General USA Incorporated, but we all know how Craig feels about them. Goodbye, folks, and have a wonderful night.